Good morning. On our program this morning of Our Stories, our guest is Wally Minnis. Wally's here to talk about his son Craig and Craig's passing and the impact that has had on him. And he has put down some of his thoughts in writing, which he's going to share with us first, and then he and I will talk some after that. So, Wally, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Dick. To be a little redundant, I might want to please excuse me for reading this instead of doing it from memory, because I was afraid if I tried to memorize it with my well-established old age, it might not turn out too well. So here we go. On January the 25th of 2022, I lost my 59-year-old son Craig to illness. It was devastating. He was a person that I was always close to, and I considered him one of my three best friends. The other two being my other son, Scott, Craig's brother, and EJ. Now that's James Spires, who is a member, or I should say a longtime member of this church, and the love of my life for the last 10 years. Craig worked for me for 18 years. We played sports together, golf, basketball, ping pong, pool, and he was one that attended the Illini basketball games with me because I had season tickets for some time. And when my wife became ill some 10, 15 years ago, he was the one that took her place because I continued going to the basketball games anyway. He was one who wanted to do things with his dad all his life. And he never really moved away. He had a wife, 4 children, 4 grandchildren, and he also coached at Youth Weekly at the Peoria Athletic Club. Now, he worked out regularly. He was very fit. He had a black belt in jiu-jitsu and was certified in Muay Thai. He lived in Normal, Illinois, but he worked here in Decatur for Dunker Electric Supply as a salesman. He would come to our house at least once every 2 weeks and have lunch and just talk, or we would talk on the phone once or twice a week. Anyway, he came down with leukemia, stage 4 CLL, in early 2021. Now, stage 4 CLL is very serious, but it is a curable type of leukemia. So he was treated with chemo and then oral chemo later. He handled the chemo miraculously well, with very few side effects. He continued to work and work out, and within about 10 to 11 months, the doctors felt he might be in remission. So they were going to test him, and he was to be tested, but on December the 17th of 2021, he tested positive for COVID. It affected him quite adversely because the chemo had caused his immune system to diminish. His oxygen level kept going down. His lungs were being damaged severely. He was eventually hospitalized and showed not much improvement, so was put on a ventilator. That kept him alive, but he continued to get worse, and other organs began to fail. For example, like the heart. This was over a period of about 5 weeks from December the 17th. So the doctor eventually called the family and me in and told us prospects of living were dire. The family all conceded that we should let him go. That's what he would have wanted. So, 12 of us gathered together in the ICU room as they disconnected the ventilator. It was very tough on everyone. It hurt. I am not much of a crier, but I cried more than I ever had in my entire life. It took about 3 hours for him to pass, and the sadness was overwhelming. He had been so full of life and energy and was always telling stories of his experiences as a salesman, and other stories too. As the days passed, I began to wonder how I was going to handle this situation. First of all, I know that time is a great healer, but I needed more help. Eventually, I developed some help from the spiritual side. I actually put it into 3 words: faith, acceptance, and gratitude. First, faith. My feeling is, and is strictly my opinion, nothing happens in God's world by mistake. Now that doesn't mean the world overall, but God's world. He decided it was time for Craig to go. Why? Why is a mystery to me, but that's the way life is. And God's will is a mystery quite a bit of the time. God's will is something that we can usually find out from our own conscience, but not always. So, and I had to accept this as being what was supposed to be right now at this moment. Also, looking back, I was grateful that he was my son and friend for 59 years. That's a long time for a friendship. I was able to teach him a lot, but it was also reciprocated. He taught me quite a few things through the years. I also had to realize that a lot of other people, his wife, his children, grandchildren, his brother, friends, customers, were all hurting with his passing. It wasn't just me. All of this has helped me handle this situation pretty well. The hurt doesn't go away, but it is not overbearing. And I am able to go on with my life and be thankful. When situations come up, if you immediately get God involved, it makes peace and serenity more easy to achieve. I can say that life has become more manageable because of my faith in God. I thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Wally, for sharing those thoughts and your feelings and explaining all that you've gone through, with the passing of Craig. One of the things I wondered about was you talked about all the things that the two of you did together. And have you found somebody to do some of those things with you, or to kind of pick up the absence of Craig being able to share those activities with you? Or?
Well, these things were in the past, going back, a ways, and we stopped going to Illini basketball games about 6 years ago or so. Yeah. So that has passed, and as I've gotten older, and a lot of those things I don't do anymore.
Right.
So I think probably today, if I do any kind of activity, it's probably with James Pires.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do have a couple of friends that they're old like me and really not too active.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I know too from some friends who've been through some similar kinds of situations that they don't always find it easy to be in the presence of the person's family. You know, the wife, kids, grandkids, and so forth, because being there tends to bring out the absence of, you know, the party who's not there, you know. So I don't know if you've had any, experience with that, and this.
Well, we have the family, and that would be my daughter-in-law, Craig's wife, and sons, and I've got some great-grandchildren that are their grandchildren.
Yeah.
And we have gotten together on at least 3 or 4 occasions, going out to eat and so forth. And oddly, just this past weekend, my 2 grandsons took me to the Illini basketball game against Rutgers as a birthday present, which my birthday was back on October 19th, but they promised me at that time, we're going to go to an Illini basketball game. So I got together and got to speak quite a bit, and I do anyway on the telephone with those 2 grandsons. And I have 2 other grandchildren with my other son. So. But those 2 are probably closer than the other 2, I would say. Yeah. At least from the standpoint of speaking, speaking on occasion.
What's one kind of really outstanding memory that you have of Craig that is something that you really cherish having, you know, as something that you could think about and remember? And
just thing that popped into my head was we used to play golf at the surf club. It's a par 3 course. It closed in 1976, but that was prior to that. So you go back to when he was just a young kid, about 12 years old or so. And we were playing a round of golf, and he was always in competition with his older brother, who was 20 months older. And I can remember that we were playing one day, and he had a really good round going when he, about the 3rd to last hole, he got a bogey or a double bogey or something. And he said, oh, and he started crying because he was trying to equal his brother's best round. And he cried, and I'll be darned if the next hole, he didn't birdie that hole, so he was able to tie his brother's best score. And I was so happy about that.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's a great memory to have, you know.
There was another time at Warrensburg Latham High School, after he was married and had his own children, that he played Santa Claus. And I remember my wife and I got to sit on his lap and get our picture taken. So that was a good time.
Yeah. Well, that's great. That's great. Well, thank you very much for sharing and kind of bringing us a presence of Craig, you know, through your memory and what you recall.